Hello, everybody. So today I want to go over 3 stocks that I see being discussed on X, that I see online a lot, and see if there are any gems, tell you what I think about these stocks. So let's begin. The first stock is Duolingo. And so let's begin with a valuation of Duolingo. You can see enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth is a 0.36. The rule of 40 is a 62. The company is highly profitable with EBITDA margin of 29%, gross margin 72%, and they are predicted to grow at 33%. So at the 0.36, it's not that expensive. It's a little expensive, but it's not that expensive, as you'll see. Like when I compare this to say like a Netflix, you'll find this stock very, very cheap. The reason why I think a lot of people like this stock is because it dropped a lot. Like this stock in May of 2025, it was $530. Today it is $199. So it has dropped a lot, and it has dropped a lot because of AI fears. A lot of people are saying, "Oh well, Duolingo is going to be pointless because of AI fears. People are going to stop using Duolingo." But is this the reality? You're talking about an app that has more than 500 million downloads. When you really think about that, that's almost as big as a social media. If you really think about this, it's 500 million people who have downloaded the app, right? 40 million reviews. So that's a leading app. Point number one. Point number two is the growth rate. The growth rate has been no hiccup. It's been absolutely outstanding. So you can see the stock price dropped because of fears of AI replacing Duolingo. The stock price did not drop because of any hiccup in the growth of the company. There was no hiccup in the growth of the company. The company has been issuing just a tad little bit of shares, maybe about 1% a year of new shares, roughly like that, if you average it out. So dilution is essentially not a concern on this company. And you can see they are doing pretty well, although, of course, they make money mostly for advertising. So they have an app, they make money for advertising, but they've been trying to have a paid subscriber option. And you can see, in my view, this paid subscriber option is really not growing very fast. The penetration, right, is roughly matching the growth in users. As you can see, daily active user growth, how many more people use Duolingo this year compared to last year? 36% year-over-year growth. That's pretty good. Monthly active users, it's okay, 20%. But if you look at the paid subscribers, they're growing roughly at the same pace, and the penetration is in fact 9% versus 8.5% last year. So I guess it's up a little bit, but barely up. And so this is a problem. The thesis of this company is, that a lot of people are going to be paying for Duolingo. They're going to be paying extra, and we're really not seeing this in the app, in my view. Now, a lot of the reason why this stock was up, and we'll talk about AI with Netflix as well, and I think AI is a much bigger threat to Netflix than it is to Duolingo. Let me tell you why. Duolingo, I find it much closer to a social media. I find it much closer to a video game. Even it's a rush of adrenaline. It's a rush of happiness hormones whenever you hear that noise, whenever you get that email, whenever you see the bird. It creates an addiction. It creates a hook. And so, do people actually use Duolingo because they want to learn a foreign language? Or do they use Duolingo because they are addicted? And in my view, because of course I know a lot of people who use Duolingo, in my view, they use Duolingo because they're addicted. Because Duolingo is a little bit like a cigarette. In my view, learning a foreign language, nothing beats an old-fashioned book that teaches you the grammar and the mechanics. Duolingo doesn't do that, right? Duolingo is a game. It's a game. You play. It's a game. You just click on buttons. It's a game. It's about user interface and UX. And to me, Duolingo is more about getting people hooked than it is about, actually teaching a language. And if it's more about getting people hooked, then AI really doesn't have that much of an impact, at least in my view. So I think it's safe from AI. It's a little too expensive for my taste at a 0.36, when I have HIMS, for example, HIMS and herself at a 0.12, why would I bother paying 3 times as much for a company which is I guess in my view really a cigarette in disguise. It's really cigarettes in disguise. And also one thing I'll say about Duolingo, which I'm not too fan of, is back in the day when I had covered it, they had this big thesis about teaching people math and teaching people early childhood education, all that sort of stuff, and it seems like they're kind of stuck in language, right? That's kind of a problem. Why wouldn't you do a Duolingo philosophy, a Duolingo religion, a Duolingo math, a Duolingo physics, where you try to teach every single topic? You could even Duolingo music. I don't know. Try to teach every single topic. If I look at Duolingo, it's still mostly language, right? Why isn't there? I don't know. Why isn't there a Duolingo music where you can teach somebody how to write and read music? Why isn't there a Duolingo coding where you can teach someone how to code, even though with AI that's largely replaced? I don't really know. I think it has to do with the fact that there's an addiction going on. People are addicted to it. If the stock got cheaper, if it got under a 0.2, it would start interesting me. So if it dropped another 30%, I would be interested. But anyways, moving on. Let's talk about Novo now. So Novo Nordisk. So you may remember me covering Novo Nordisk more than a year back. And I had concerns about Novo Nordisk because of the new administration in the United States and possibly tariffs, and also the fact that they are located in Denmark and Denmark owns Greenland. And I was like, okay, there could be a lot of geopolitics, there could be a lot of tariff, something could happen. The USA could really go after Novo and make sure Lilly wins. And I'm pleased to say, if I'm being objective now, most of my fears were unfounded. Most of these fears were unfounded. In fact, Novo just did a partnership with the President of the United States to lower its drugs in the US. They're investing $10 billion in the United States, expanding one of their big plants, manufacturing in the USA, or manufacturing Ozempic in the USA, so that we're not going to have tariffs because of that. And I think many of my fears that I had in 2024 did not come out to be true. Yet, if you look at the stock reacted as if my fears came out to be true, but they didn't. My fears didn't come true. So I cannot understand why the stock dropped this much. The stock was divided by 3, essentially divided by 3. So it's tough for me to understand. This is a company who's still predicted to grow at 16% over the next 12 months. Gross margin is 84%. EBITDA margin is 52%. So I'm loving this. Rule of 40 of 68. And you can see the stock is much cheaper on a growth-adjusted business basis than, say, a Duolingo at a 0.26. 0.26 for a company that is very stable, for a company that has $161 billion, for a company that still generates stable cash because of the diabetes business, because of the insulin business. Let's not forget this company is a diabetes company. And of course, people with type 2 diabetes, they have to keep on taking their drugs this whole life. So it has a recurring revenue, and they are well established in trad health. Trad health uses their products. Wegovy and Ozempic is doing well through trad health and conventional channels. You go get a physical and maybe they prescribe you Wegovy or Ozempic, right? So they're capturing a different side of the market than HIMSS. Not to mention, HIMSS may be in discussion with Novo again to distribute their branded medications again. And Novo has catalysts. Novo has very interesting catalysts. For me, the most interesting catalyst is India. Apparently, Ozempic and a lot of GLP-1s, I didn't dig too much into it, but apparently their products are going to India. And India, you may know or not, but there's a lot of overweight population in India. Actually, it's actually tens of millions of people, and so that could be a big deal if they go after the Indian market. Of course, 1.5 billion citizens over there, so it's like a lot of people. So that could be a very big deal. And they are oral semaglutide, so that already exists in form of Rybelsus, but the FDA indication is very small. It's really for diabetes. There's hope that there will be a wider indication for weight loss and an oral medication approved for weight loss. And so that would solve the problem of the needles if they had that. You can see Novo's trying to solve the problem of a needle by doing a weight loss pill. HIMSS is trying to solve the problem of the needle by doing a painless injection. So 2 different paths to kind of the same hurdle, which was a lot of people don't want to inject themselves because they have a fear of needles. That's kind of like what they're trying to go after that problem. I think that could be a short-term catalyst. So in my view, this stock is pretty cheap. It's pretty cheap. I've been looking at it for a while. It's pretty cheap. It is tempting. It is tempting. The stock is tempting. And I'll finish with Netflix. So Netflix, oh my gosh, Netflix. Okay, I don't think I've ever discussed Netflix on the channel. In fact, in my spreadsheet, this is my first time inputting the numbers for Netflix in my spreadsheet. And despite the drop, we've had a little bit of a drop in the price of Netflix the past few months. My spreadsheet is not kind to Netflix. Enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth is 1.39. The rule of 40 is 45. I guess it's good, but it's barely above 40. And here paying, nearly 9 times sales, 33 times EBITDA. So Netflix, when I compare Netflix, to me, it's expensive. It's expensive because the market has decided that Netflix was the uncontested leader. But then why is it so expensive, right? Because Amazon is uncontested, Google is uncontested, Meta is uncontested, Nvidia is uncontested, and they are much, much cheaper than Netflix on my spreadsheet. So, and they grow faster, right? So you have big tech companies that are bigger, cheaper, grow faster, more optionality everywhere. And Netflix, for some reason, is sky high, trading at sky high valuation. And I think it's giving them bad ideas. Now, that deal for Warner Brothers, to buy Warner Brothers at $82 billion, that caught my attention. And in fact, a lot of that deal, I think $25 of it is going to be paid in cash. They're going to issue some new shares to buy Time Warner. So that means that the hard work that they did in buybacks, worth about 3 years worth of buybacks, trying to reduce the number of shares outstanding. Well, that's going to spike again if they acquire Time Warner, because they're going to have to issue new shares. And I really dislike this acquisition because clearly AT&T tried to acquire Warner Brothers, and they failed, and they lost a lot of money, AT&T, trying to do that. And they failed because the culture clashed. And I'm pretty sure, given the stance that I've seen traditional Hollywood have against Netflix, you could have a different bit of a cultural clash, but you could also have a cultural clash if Netflix ends up acquiring HBO being, of course, the former rival. So I really dislike this. I think there's a lot of operational risk, there's a lot of execution risk, and maybe Netflix is resting on its laurels, because the threat that I see, which is not a threat that I see for Duolingo, because I don't think Duolingo is really about language lessons. I think Duolingo is about an addiction and adrenaline that is released when you hear the little ding and you hear a little bird. That's what I think Duolingo is about. Netflix is not like that. Netflix is really about shows and movies, and I see AI-generated shows and movies as a real threat to Netflix. In fact, I have been very impressed by a lot of AI-generated videos and content that you find on YouTube now. Some of it has been really, really good in just about all fields of creativity. People are using AI to make short films right now, 10, 15 minutes, but they are using AI, and some of these channels have millions of views. Some of these videos have millions of views, and it's growing exponential. We're seeing the same thing happening in music, where you have a lot of AI generated music. And so if entertainment in the future is a competition from AI creator to AI creator, and then eventually just AI, I don't see how Netflix has a competitive advantage in AI. Given that they rent most of their server, they still rent for Amazon Web Services. I don't see how they have a competitive advantage in AI. So if the future is, creating new franchises, like you could create, take Star Wars. You could create a franchise that's inspired by Star Wars, but that is no Star Wars, so you don't have any intellectual property. You could just create a new franchise and just do a bunch of new shows. And of course, if you fast forward that, you could just have a private AI. You could just have a local AI on your phone, and you ask your AI to generate a Star Wars show for you, and it just generates it for you. So just like Netflix disrupted Blockbuster via streaming, and before that DVDs and business and model innovation and being new, I think Netflix could be disrupted by AI. And to me, I look at this as a real threat. And it's not a Netflix specific threat. It's also a just general entertainment / Hollywood threat that I see. And to me, this is overhyped. To me, this stock is too expensive. It's much too expensive. Yes, it's the absolute leader, but the market is pricing everywhere that they are the number one leader. And there's no network effect. Netflix doesn't have really any network effect that much. So to me, I find this concerning. The valuation I don't find compelling at all. I think Netflix is super expensive and growing only at 15%. If I were to be interested in these uncontested leaders, I would go for Nvidia or Google, which are both cheaper than Netflix. So it's like, anyway, that's what I would do. I don't like Netflix. But anyways, yep. This was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon. Follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.